وأصحابه والأخيار وسلم تسليما كثيرا أجمعين. وبعد, جزاكم الله خيرا, جزاكم الله خيرا, Ramadan Mubarak. For those who have joined us tonight, alhamdulillah, we just have a half an hour to give a reminder. We understand that a lot of people may be cooking, they may be busy. So we're just going to be brief, inshallah. We're not going to keep you more than 30 minutes, inshallah ta'ala. So tonight is night 5, inshallah ta'ala. So in reciting the Quran, we're going to be reciting Juz 5. And so that is from Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 24 to verse 147. So first I want to talk about, because you know it's an entire juice, so I can't get an entire juice in 30 minutes. So what I primarily want to talk about tonight is the main crux of each juice. So each night, each Monday night, Wednesday night, pre-Iftar, we'll be just doing some of the main, like 1 or 2 of the main themes of that juice, because obviously we can't do more than that. So in terms of Nisa, it's a perfect opportunity. Why? Because number one, there's no holy book on earth. There's no sacred text that has an entire chapter dedicated to simply only women. Right? You're not going to find any text on earth that's a holy book, a sacred text that claims to be from God, where it has a chapter called An-Nisa, the women, dedicated to clarifying their esteem, their position, their rights, their duties. You're not going to find it. That's number one. Also, in Babylonian civilization, women were denied the right by law, right? They were denied all rights by law. And if a man murdered a woman, then instead of him being punished, they would murder his wife, right? And in Greek civilization, similarly, women were considered subhuman. In Egyptian civilization, pre-Islam, of course, prostitution, women were seen as evil. Prostitution was widespread. Sexual perversion grew. They would allow women, they would use women like tools and like objects. Even at the zenith of Rome's dominance, men had the right to take the life of their wives. And this is something that is not correct and contrary to, what we see in small pockets of Islamic tribal custom. It has nothing to do with Islam. Also, even we know in pre-Islam Arabia, female daughters would be buried alive. So even in America, just 40 years ago, women had to fight for the right to vote, for the right to work, and all of these different kind of struggles they had, women's suffrage movement like this. So keep those things in mind when we go over these few verses that appear in what we're going to be reciting in Taraweeh tonight in Juz 5, Surah An-Nisa. Just keep those things in mind. So let's keep the verse in context. I want to look at verse 34, right? So if you have a Quran in front of you, open it up to chapter 4, verse 34. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, ar-rijalu qawamun ala nisa'i bima faddala Allahu ba'dahum ala ba'd wa bima anfaqu min amwalihim. So let's look at this verse and then let's break it apart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has made one of them to excel over the other because they spend out of their possessions to support women, right? And so this verse has been used in many different ways, and we want to talk about some of the words in this verse, and there's more to the verse that we'll visit in a second. So first, if you look at what a qawam is, a qawam or qayyum, right? Qayyim, Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Qayyim, the famous jurist, the famous scholar, the student of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, the student of the principal, right? His father was a rector, was a superintendent of a large university, a large school. So he was called Ibn Qayyim, the student of the principal. So a qayyim is a person responsible for an individual or an organization, right? Supervising the affairs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the man a qawam over his family, because he's protecting and safeguarding them, and Allah has made him in this position. So particularly the verb used here, faddala, right? It's from fadl. It's not used to mean that Allah has made one better than the other. It's not a vertical measurement, right? It's a horizontal measurement, right? It's not that Allah has made one superior over the other. in honor and dignity. Rather, what it means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed one of the genders with certain physical qualities, which he has not endowed the other gender, namely strength for protection and stamina for working and tilling the fields to provide for his family. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying Allah has made one excel the other physically in strength and stamina, and they spend out of possessions, right? So it doesn't mean that a woman is not equal. Rather, she has this too to some extent, not just to the standards that she doesn't have it to the extent of a man. So with this in mind, the male is qualified by Allah to function as a head provider and protector for the family. So it's established now. We've established that there's no hierarchy in terms of a man being greater or better than a woman. Rather, a man has been given authority over the household in a general sense, because a man is been made to physically and more stamina. So it's established that this is in place now. But we also know that a woman she possesses qualities that a man doesn't have. Walaikum salam. She possesses qualities that a man doesn't have. We're looking at verse 34 of chapter 4, Surah An-Nisa. This is part of the juz that we're reading tonight, juz 5. It will be all of Nisa from I think 24 to like 147. So if you look at what a woman has, she has thoughtfulness. Men are not as thoughtful as women. That's the standard. There's exceptions to that, of course. She has patience. She has compassion. These are qualities that have a high rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also a high rank in bringing about the goal of Islam, which is justice. So let's look at a few words that have been the source of much contention in Islam and in the construct of the Muslim family. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the same verse, تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ, right? He says, so if you fear nushuz from women, if you fear nushuz from women. So oftentimes, especially in the English translation, they translate nushuz as ill conduct. And then the scholars, some of them, not all of them, when you see the explanation for nushuz as ill conduct, what does ill conduct mean? They'll explain it and say disobedience, right? That ill conduct means disobedience. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says later on in Surah An-Nisa, verse 128, he says, so if a woman fears nushuz from her husband, right? So nushuz, with the understanding that it means disobedience, that ill conduct is equated with disobedience. That would mean that if a woman feels disobedience from her husband, if she fears disobedience from her husband. So a woman, according to what they're saying, a woman obeys her husband and her husband obeys his wife. But in fact, nushuz does not mean disobedience. It can be translated as ill conduct. But what the ulama have said is this, is that it means the state when one spouse violates the marital duties, right? When one spouse violates the marital duties. So let's look at what the duties are for a man and a woman, because that has also been mistaken, what nushuz is. And I know brothers who from all cultures will walk around with the Quran in their hand, chasing their wife around the house, forcing her, to read the text. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, that you owe me this. So nushuz it means the state when one spouse, either spouse, violates the marital duties. So what are the marital duties? For a woman, it means several things. It means that she has neglected guarding her husband's secrets, right? Guarding his bad habits, perhaps. And I don't mean, we'll explain what that means. That just means maybe he has some shortcomings. And nushuz means that she has neglected guarding his shortcomings, right? She's backbiting and slandering him. We know that when Ibrahim alayhi salam, he came to the door of his son Ismail to visit. Ismail wasn't home, but his wife was home. And Ibrahim said, Kayf al-hal, how's your condition? And she said, well, we're struggling. We don't have enough food. It's hard times. And so when Ismail came back, Ibrahim said, change the threshold of your door, meaning like divorce your wife because she's not safeguarding your secrets. So this is what it means. If a wife is having a hard time at home, financially, or the family's going through some personal struggles, she shouldn't be on the phone with every Aisha and every Khadija spreading the business of her husband. That's the first nushuz. The second is that, that's her first marital duty. The second marital duty is to guard her body and her dignity in public, that she doesn't become tabarruj, Tabarruj means that she doesn't flaunt her body, or she doesn't move in such a way that she attracts men, right? And this just means general modesty. It doesn't mean that she has to wear a niqab, a face veil, that she has to wear all black, that she has to wear gloves. That's not what it means. It means that she's modest and she's decent according to the general standards of Islam. And she's not tabarruj, which is more like just loose and flirtatious. So another marital duty is that she doesn't neglect his emotional and physical needs. And she doesn't, and that just means that she gives him what he needs emotionally. She supports him, his hopes and dreams and aspirations. And she's there for him physically in a reasonable way, right? That doesn't mean that he can rape her, and Allah's not shy of the truth, right? You see, some scholars have interpreted that she has to, acquiesce to him at all times of the day. This is an extreme position. This is not the position that Islam takes. When we say there for him physically, it's in with reasonable bounds. Reasonable bounds. As Allah says, live with them bil ma'ruf. Live with them according to the custom and standard of the society. And then also from the marital duties of a wife is that she has to look after her children. So nushuz means she's not looking after her children. She's not keeping the husband's secrets. She's not dignified when she's in public. And also she's not satisfying him emotionally or physically. It has nothing to do with cooking or cleaning, right? So nushuz doesn't mean if your wife is not cleaning or cooking. In fact, Aisha said the Prophet ﷺ used to serve his family. He used to cook his own food, sew his own clothes, and serve his family. So in fact, if we're looking at what's on paper, the Prophet ﷺ took over those chores when he could. So nushuz doesn't mean that a wife is not cleaning and cooking. That's one thing. Now, what does nushuz mean for a husband? There are some duties, the marital duties that it means. Again, just like a wife, it doesn't just mean disobedience. So ill conduct or nushuz for a husband, it means that he hasn't fulfilled the promise of her dowry, right? Very big. That if a man has put a mahar in place, he has to fulfill that mahar within the given time. If not, he has to get permission from the wife that he needs more time. Otherwise, this is grounds for divorce. Also, he has stopped spending and maintaining on her. He has not stopped spending on her and maintaining her, rather. So this means that he has to spend on her in a reasonable way according to what she's used to when she left her family's household, right? And the ulama say, the fuqaha say, this should be enough food and clothing for the season, right? So every season she gets clothing appropriate for the season, and she gets enough food to last her that season according to what's needed. Also, nushuz means he's abusing her. So that means that physical, mental, verbal abuse, unacceptable. We've read some fatwa from some of the ulama who say, if your husband is beating you, be patient, sister. No, you don't have to be patient in this condition. Your safety and well-being comes before sabr in this case. And finally, he may be neglecting her with respect to her emotional needs, her quality time needs, or physically as well. So he has to cater to her emotionally, physically, as well as give her quality time. So that's nushuz. So now look at this. So when Allah speaks about a wife having nushuz towards her husband, he says this, and this is in the same verse 34 of Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4. He says, فَعِذُوهُنَّ, right? So he says, if your wife has neglected any of those things, فَعِذُوهُنَّ, advise them, right? Nadar, right? Advise them, engage in discourse, talk to them. Hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. Communicate, right? So we know communication is the key to any healthy relationship. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is advising the husband, civil discourse. Sit down with your wife and say, hey, look, I've noticed this. This is what's going on, right? So that's number one. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he continues. He says, وَahْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, right? He says, and if that doesn't work, then don't sleep in the same bed with them. Meaning sleep on the couch. Don't leave the house. It doesn't mean go stay in a hotel, because that's opening the door for fitna. It means sleep on the couch, sleep in the bunk bed where the children are, sleep on the floor, but you're starting to let her know, I'm very disappointed, I'm upset. And then he says, wadribuhunna, wadribuhunna. And this is the word that we want to stop and take a couple minutes to talk about, because we've established already that the man and the woman are equal. In Islam, there's what's called complementarianism, meaning that men and women are equal, but they're expected to do different things that complement one another, right? So we've already established that a man is the qawwam, he is the provider and protector because he's been made to be physically stronger. And we've established that nushuz is both for the man and the wife if they're neglecting their marital duties. It doesn't mean disobedience. So now we're saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the advice. Number one, if your wife is doing something that's displeasing to you, engage in communication, talk, be civil. Secondly, if she continues, don't sleep in the same bed. And then third, wadribuhunna. And this is where the controversy comes in. Why? Because the translation, you'll read in the English translation, wadribuhunna means beat them. And then it'll have in parentheses, lightly. Lightly is a way that they're apologizing for the verse, beat them, right? So beat them lightly. Lightly doesn't appear anywhere in the Arabic. Or you'll find tap them, strike them, right? But the word daraba, according to the scholars of the language, it has dozens and dozens of meanings. One of which is to strike or hit. And this is the most common usage of the word, strike or hit, daraba. So if this is the most common usage of the word, okay, alhamdulillah. But let's look at the sunnah now, right? Because remember, the first way to understand Quran is through Quran, right? We understand Quran through Quran, it's literal. But then the second way to understand Quran is through the understanding of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through the seerah, through the sunnah, or through the hadith, right? So they asked Aisha, radiyallahu anha, they said, how was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How was his character? She said he was the Quran walking. Meaning that he adhered to the book perfectly, right? He adhered to this book perfectly. And so they asked her, did he ever strike anyone? Aisha said he never struck a human or an animal except in battle, meaning that wasn't his thing, right? If he was in a battle, engaged as a general, right, then this is when the rules would change. She said he never struck a human or an animal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You got a great example in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have an excellent example, right, in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's look at his example. Did he ever have reason to be upset with his wives, right? So let's not paint the picture that the Sahabiyat were like angels. They were saintly, no doubt about it. They were the most pious women to ever walk on the earth, no doubt about it. But they were human. And so just to give you a particular story, we know this famous story. It's the story of Aisha and Hafsa, radiyallahu anhuma. They became upset that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was spending so much time with Zainab, because Zainab, after the prayer, she used to make a certain honey drink for him. And so he would stop by. He loved this drink. He would drink the drink, enjoy himself, and he would go about his day. So Aisha and Hafsa, they said, look, we don't like him doing that. So Aisha said, look, when he comes to your house, you tell him he has a foul odor coming from his mouth, and I'll do the same. So he came to Aisha's house, sat down next to her. She said, oh, what have you been drinking? He said, oh, it must be the drink I have, right? I'll stop drinking it. He went to Hafsa's house, same thing. So he said, I'm going to stop drinking it. Wallahi ladim, I'm going to stop drinking it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, لِمَا تُحَرِّمُوا مَا أَحَّلَ اللَّهُ لَكَ. Why have you made haram what Allah made halal for you, right? Why are you saying you're not going to drink it? I made it halal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed to her that he revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that his wives had kind of planned a plot against him, right? So remember, at this same time, Medina had begun to flourish as a Muslim nation. So they were complaining, we want some jewels, we want some nice furniture. Can our house be decorated? And he said, look, either you want me or you want these things, right? Either you want me in the akhirah or you want this dunya. So he's getting very frustrated with them. He was very upset when he found out that Hafsa and Aisha had lied to him about this drink. So look at what he did. You're talking about 1,400 years ago. If any man had a reason to put his hands on his wife, it was him at that moment. They lied, they conspired against him, right? So if any man 1,400 years ago had a right to put his hands on a woman, you would think it would be during this time. But look how his reaction was. He didn't hit them at all. He followed the true meaning of this verse, since he was the walking Quran, right? He was the walking Quran, according to his wife. He darabahunna. He darabahunna. Daraba in this verse, according to the ulama, not Taymullah, it means to shock or to galvanize, right? To galvanize or to shock. So he darabahunna. He said, look, okay, you guys want this world, you're playing tricks on me. I'm leaving. I'm making a vow to stay away from you for an entire month. And this is the meaning of daraba, right? In this verse, wadribuhunna. So Allah saying, first, advise them, talk to them. If that doesn't work over some time, then don't sleep with them in the bed. Let them know you're upset. And if not, do something they never thought you'd do, which doesn't mean assault them. What it means is, if Wednesday night is the night you cook, don't cook. If Thursday night is date night, don't be there for date night. If Friday night you watch a movie together, don't show up for the movie, right? If there's a family gathering and it's at her family's house, don't go. And that might be a lot of trouble, but I'm just giving you some advice that, we're thinking of different creative ways. My point is, do something to say, so that she'll say, what it means is that she should say, wow, subhanAllah, he's really upset. It doesn't mean strike them or hit them, because the Prophet ﷺ, when Fatima bint Qais, she came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, I've gotten 3 proposals for marriage. Muawiyah, Abu Jaham, and Usama ibn Zayd. They want to marry me. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, don't marry Muawiyah. He's poor. He's a poor man. You'll be struggling. He said, as for Abu Jaham, he's a man who habitually beats women. Don't marry him. So he warned against a man who beats women. And this is a companion, Abu Jaham, right? He had some shortcomings. He was human. The Prophet ﷺ said, Abu Jaham, he beats women. Don't marry him. As for Usama, marry him. He's the one for you, right? And so we look at this verse in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 34. And this verse has so much depth and meaning in it that Allah took the time to explain how to handle marital discord, number one, but also to explain the status of a woman as a mother and as a wife and as a daughter and as an auntie throughout the entire chapter of this verse. The entire chapter of this particular part of the Quran. So what we take from that, inshallah ta'ala, is that Allah has given special attention to the women by giving them an entire chapter of a book, which you'll never see in any sacred text other than the Quran on the face of the earth, right? Even there's a chapter called Surah Maryam, after Mary, the mother of Jesus. You're not going to find that in any other sacred book as well. So Allah loves us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he loves the women, and he has taken time to teach us and instruct us on how we should have interaction with one another. So the idea that we're unequal, wrong. The idea that a woman has to be obedient to such an extent that she has to have intimacy with her husband at the drop of a dime, right? Or the idea that he can beat her. This is all false explanations, and Allah knows best. I'm going to look at the chat right here. Okay. And so someone says, does this apply to wives if the husband is too upset them? They do something to shock, galvanize? I would say yes. I would say yes, right? Because a woman, when the Prophet ﷺ was on his deathbed, and we have 5 more minutes, I'm not going to keep people too long. I know people are preparing for iftar. When the Prophet ﷺ was on his deathbed, and usually when he was leaving, right? So usually when you go on a vacation, you handle the most important issues, right? You tell your neighbor, don't forget to feed the fish and get my mail, right? Feed the fish and pick up my mail for me, neighbor, right? Those are the 2 main things. You talk about the main issues. So on his deathbed, the Prophet ﷺ, he said 2 things. He said, salah, salah, salah. right? Prayer, prayer, prayer. And he also said, an-nisa, 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 women, 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 right? He was saying, do right by women because they're your captives, in a sense, quote unquote. So a woman, she has a limited amount of things that she can do. And so we would say galvanizing her husband or shocking him with something within reason is totally permissible to do. Yeah, let him know you're upset. Don't cook. Do the same thing. Do the reverse of what I said. Don't show up for date night. If he has a gathering with his family, don't show up if he's upset. I mean, if he's upset you in a way that he's not understanding the issue. And I'm not trying to cause a greater problem in households. Of course, the first way is the best, to communicate and compromise. But I'm saying certainly that beating is nowhere in the construct of Islam. Women don't have to be patient with that. In fact, a woman's safety comes before any of the like being patient with the marriage. No, you have to be safe first. You have to feel safe and secure in your own house. If you don't, then there's hotlines, there's the masjid you can call, there's things you can do. And for me, and according to the Mufassirin, this is the meaning of 434, inshallah ta'ala. So someone says, isn't there a hadith that says he used a leaf or something along these lines to admonish? No, this is in the story of Prophet Ayub alayhi salam. It says that he vowed to discipline his wife because she said a word of disbelief. She stuck by him, but she said a word of disbelief when he had been, forsaken by his family, thrown in a dump for 12 or so years. She said, why isn't Allah helping us? This is what she said. Why isn't Allah helping us? And he said, when I get better, I'm going to discipline you, according to the explanation of his story. And so Ayub, they say when Allah restored his health and made him better, and they said he took a bushel of leaves, and because he made a vow to discipline his wife, he symbolically ran the leaves over her feet as if to say, I am disciplining you to keep my vow in place. And Allah knows best. No, alhamdulillah, she can't beat you either, my brother. Allahu Akbar. No, may Allah protect us from that. That's pretty good. So barakallahu feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us. May Allah keep us safe. May Allah allow us to have a great iftar, accept our fasting, accept our standing, give us the energy to stand and accept our standing tonight. And inshallah ta'ala, we will see you either tomorrow in my class from 2 to 3:30. We're going over the names of Allah, one a day. We will also see you Wednesday, inshallah ta'ala. I'll be here at 6 o'clock from 6 to 6:30. And on Friday is the fundraiser, the virtual fundraiser, starting at 8 p.m., inshallah ta'ala. So from 8 to 9, we advise you to log on. It'll be Dr. Altaf Hussein, I believe, and I'll have some brief words, maybe 5-10 minutes. I'll say some words of reminder of why it's so important to support our local masajid. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us.